morning and welcome to the Minister's Press Briefing here at the Ministry of Information. Today we have invited you at the instance of the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, who is also the Member of Parliament for Damango constituency, Honorable Jinapor. We are here today to talk about the state of Ghana's public lands. I believe in recent times it's become one of the conversations that is in the public interest, and the Honorable Minister, as always, is committed to public education and sharing information for the purpose of accountability. So we are here for that conversation. But before I yield to the Honorable Minister, permit me to acknowledge some dignitaries who are with us this morning, and also
9 years, commencing from 1st April 1974. This lease will expire in the year 2073. Until then, government has no direct control whatsoever over the use of this land. After building on the land, they said Mr. Leighton entered into a private contract with the Bulgarian embassy and rented a house to the embassy for a short-term period before granting them a 50-year sublease. However, by a letter dated 5th November 1990, the then Ministry of Foreign Affairs declared the sublease to the Bulgarian embassy as void. Events following this declaration resulted in a series of litigations, some of which are still pending in our law courts. According to the sole inquirer appointed to investigate the demolition of the building, it was demolished by one Jojo Hager, said to be the executor of the will of Mr. Leighton, pursuant to a court order. As previously stated, the government of Ghana played no role in the transaction whatsoever between Mr. Leighton and the Bulgarian embassy, nor was it a party to the contract or the demolition exercise. Government, however, decided to intervene in the matter due to the involvement of the Bulgarian embassy, which is an accredited diplomatic mission in the country. The Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration have engaged the parties involved extensively and have agreed on some compensation for the Bulgarian embassy, which will be paid by those who undertook the demolition exercise. For the avoidance of doubt, ladies and gentlemen, this compensation will not be paid by the Akufo-Addo government. Government will, however, continue to engage the parties until the matter is fully resolved. How is this evidence of state capture? Then there is the issue of land belonging to the prison service at Roman Ridge, which was leased as far back as 2005, and which matter has gone to court, and the court has delivered judgment on the matter. What is the role of the Akufo-Addo government in a land granted to a private developer as far back as 2005? Ladies and gentlemen, how is this evidence of state capture? Another allegation that has been made as evidence of state capture by the Akufo-Addo government is the Parks and Gardens land at Cantonment. This land was acquired in 1894 and granted to the predecessor of the Department of Parks and Gardens in 1952. The land was, however, leased to a company named Wontirim Company Limited on 29th November 2016, long before the current government came to power. And those who were in power when the land was sold in 2016 have turned around to falsely accuse the Akufo-Addo government of selling this parcel of land. Indeed, the lease was made pursuant to a request from the then Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, dated 16th August 2012, under the hand of its then Deputy Minister, Honorable Elvis Afriye Ankara, to sell 2 acres of the land, quote, to enable the Parks and Gardens raise the needed funding to resource itself, end quote. According to the then Deputy Minister, he stated further, and I quote, proceeds from the sale shall be used to provide Parks and Gardens with a new office, staff bars, some tractors, water tankers, and the needed hand tools it is currently in dire need of to restructure and reposition itself as a viable government agency, end quote. And yet, even though the land was sold in 2016 in accordance with the minister's request. We haven't seen the new office complex of the parks and gardens, the water tankers, the tractors, and all the other things that the proceeds of the sale were supposed to be used for. Again, these are allegations. Again, there are allegations that this government has sold some bungalows belonging to the Judicial Service in cantonments to a private developer. These bungalows in question were, however, sold as far back as 13 July 2015 to a company named Friends Oil Company Limited, following an approval granted by the then Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Honorable Ni Osa Mills, on 2nd June 2015. Is it therefore not surprising, ladies and gentlemen, that the very people who supervise the sale of this property to Friends Oil Company Limited will turn around and accuse the Akufo-Addo government of state capture? For the Du-bois Centre, as we have explained in the press release of 16 July 2024, the Lands Commission, the manager of public lands, and the repository of records of land transactions has no pending application for the transfer of this land. For the avoidance of doubt, the land in question, as we speak, remains in the name of the Du-bois Centre. That land has not been sold. Ladies and gentlemen, the above examples clearly shows that the allegations of state capture and the narrative that this government is indiscriminately selling public lands are all palpably false, without merit, and obviously actuated by political considerations, given the heated political season we find ourselves. Indeed, the evidence shows that the Akufo-Addo government has been meticulous in protecting public lands in the public interest. On 17 August 2021, with the approval of the President of the Republic, a policy directive was issued to the Lands Commission, pursuant to Article 2582 of the National Constitution, to, and I quote, refer all transactions relating to the grant of any interest in public lands to the office of the Minister for prior approval, end quote. This was to ensure that the President, in whom these lands are vested, discharges his constitutional duty in an informed manner. The directive further stated, and I quote, any deed executed without the approval of the President through the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources will be deemed void, as same will have been done without the authority of the President in whom these lands are vested, end quote. In Northern Region, for example, the Regional Lands Commission has been directed to reverse a number of leases over public lands granted to private developers without the prior approval of the President in accordance with this policy directive. This followed a report of a 3-member committee the ministry constituted to investigate allegations of transfer of public lands in the region. This is a testament to our unwavering commitment to protect public lands in the public interest. Apart from the above directive to the Lands Commission, a series of letters and correspondence have been written to all public institutions to utilize public lands granted them for the purposes for which they were granted only, and not to create any third-party interest in such lands without the express written approval of the President given through his minister responsible for lands. Just a couple of weeks ago, Cabinet issued further directives to all public bodies, public institutions, and public corporations, including public investors, not to lease, sublet, assign, transfer, dispose of, or otherwise create any third-party interest in any public land granted or allocated them without the prior written approval of the President of the Republic. This directive, which was subsequently published in the dailies on Thursday, August 8, 2024, applies to all public lands that have been granted to public institutions, whether by way of freehold, leasehold, or any other form of grant. The days of public institutions entering into public-private partnership agreements with public lands without the approval of the President are obviously over, and any person who enters into any transaction does so at his or her own risk. All these measures have been put in place to ensure the protection of public lands and to regulate their utilization, ultimately in the public interest. Aside these preventative measures, pursuant to Section 236 of the Lands Act 2020, Act 1036, which enjoins the state to take steps to recover encroached public lands, the ministry constituted a public lands protection team to work with the Lands Commission to protect public lands from encroachment and recover those that have already been encroached. The team, in collaboration with the Lands Commission and the Ghana Police Service, has undertaken a number of operations to recover encroached public lands. The Commission is also working with the Ghana Police Service to provide protection for all public lands and prevent them from further encroachment. We have also engaged ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, to take steps to protect lands acquired for their use or which fall within their jurisdiction of the assemblies in accordance with Section 236 of Act 1036. Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, there is also the issue of the state returning lands to pre-acquisition owners. Let me use this opportunity to respectfully make a very important distinction between Article 26 of our national constitution, which requires that the state give pre-acquisition owners the first right to acquire compulsorily acquired land, which when the state no longer has a need for the land, and instances where the state returns portions of compulsorily acquired lands to pre-acquisition owners in lieu of compensation or some other consideration. As the Supreme Court explained in the case of Obite Churu III and Attorney General, 2010 Supreme Court of Ghana Law Report 904, Article 20 has a futuristic intention and does not apply to lands acquired by the state prior to the coming into force of the Constitution. And I did indicate that as far back as 5th September 2013, His Excellency President Mohammed's government granted cabinet approval for the return of some of these land to the old family. And at the time I became minister, 362 acres of the land had been concluded, leases had been given in respect of those lands. Some of them, decisions have been made that 362 of the Achimota Forest lands be returned to the old family for one consideration or the other. And that transcended from President Kufuor's government all the way to President Akufo-Addo's government up to 2021 when I became minister. We set up a team, we went into negotiations with Achimota Forest because we were concerned about the ecological integrity of the forest, and we wanted a buffer. We wanted a buffer between what the Achimota Forest, the old family will have, and what will now constitute today's Achimota Forest. And we were able to negotiate a reduction of 100 acres out of the 362 acres which had been cast in iron by previous governments, and the current administration had been bound legally by previous governments for the release of 362 acres of the Achimota Forest. And so as we speak today, we've negotiated a reduction of 100 acres, and now the parcel of land that is supposed to be released back to the old family is 262 acres. Now let me also make the point that we structured the arrangement in such a way that even for an individual or anybody to take possession of the land, given the ecological sensitivity of the forest reserve, we put in place stringent condition precedent that one has to satisfy before the person can take possession of the land. And so as I speak today, even though this transaction has been concluded a year or so ago, nobody is taking possession of even a square meter of Achimota Forest land or a square meter of the land that has been given to the old family, because you are required to go through a very laborious process to satisfy us that, for example, you're not going to take the land and build a factory which will compromise the ecological integrity of the forest reserve as currently constituted. So it is still work in progress, and people have applied to take possession of portions of the land. They are going through the process. They have to go through EPA, they have to go through LUSPA, they have to go through the assembly, they have to go through Forestry Commission. So it is detailed, and that's the update I can give you. But the question on the withdrawal of lease by the Judicial Service land. So